watched Chester take out the knife. The white bear walked calmly over to Jeremy's bed and in one swift motion, slit the boy's throat. He didn't even have a chance to scream. I covered my eyes, unable to look at the horrible sight. After a while, I peeked out through my fingers and saw that Chester was sawing Jeremy's head off. Then, he took the knife and poked out his right eye. After that, Chester started chuckling like a maniac. He held up Jeremy's severed head triumphantly. I started crying. "Don't be scared, Leo," he growled. "I did this because you're my bestest friend. I love you." "I love you too, Chester," I whispered. After that, Chester opened the window and told me to climb out. "Be careful," he said. "Don't leave any fingerprints." We snuck out of the house and Chester left Jeremy's head in the driveway for his parents to find. We went home and got into bed. Chester tucked me in and sat beside me until I fell asleep. The next morning, as my mother was preparing breakfast, I saw a news report on TV about Jeremy's murder. As I listened to the gruesome details, I glanced over at Chester. There was an evil grin on his face. I felt sick to my stomach and couldn't eat a thing. I didn't want to take Chester to school with me, but when my mom's back was turned, he hopped into my backpack. I didn't have a choice. I had to ditch him. I headed towards the bus stop and on the way, I spotted a garbage can. As quick as I could, I tossed the backpack into the trash, slammed down the lid and ran away. That evening, when I came home from school, I saw that the trash collectors had taken away the garbage. Chester had been taken with it. I thought I had gotten rid of Chester for good. Years later, I left school and went to college. There, I met the love of my life, Donna Hartman, and after graduation we got married and moved in together. One night, I was sitting in the living room, reading a book while Donna was cooking dinner. Suddenly, I heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the kitchen. I jumped out of my chair and rushed out to see what was wrong. As soon as I entered the kitchen, I screamed in horror. Donna's body was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Her severed head was sitting in the frying pan and her right eye had been poked out. Then, I saw Chester standing on the kitchen table, a bloody knife clutched tightly in his furry hand. "You shouldn't have crossed me, Leo," he growled. "Now you've made me angry, and you know how a white bear acts when he's angry." Before I had a chance to react, Chester jumped at me and tried to stab me in the face. I managed to dodge him and he stabbed the kitchen cabinet instead. The knife got stuck in the wood and Chester began struggling desperately to remove it. Quickly, I opened a drawer and grabbed the first thing I could find, a saucepan. I swung the metal saucepan as hard as I could and struck Chester over the head. For a moment, he was stunned. Then, he leaped on top of me and his furry paws grabbed for my throat. He began choking me, and I struggled to push him off. I pulled the knife out of the kitchen cabinet and began stabbing him, but it was no use. The blade just went through his stuffing. It didn't hurt him at all. Then, Chester picked up a cheese grater and tried to grate my face off. I dropped the knife. My hands searched desperately for something I could use as a weapon. I grabbed a soup ladle and began beating him ferociously over the head with it. Then, I picked up a dinner plate and broke it over his head. He released me from his grip and I fled out the front door and ran to the safety of a neighbor's house. I called the police and told them an intruder had broken into my house and murdered my wife. A few minutes later, several police cars came speeding down the street and screeched to a halt outside my driveway. The officers emerged from their cars with their guns drawn and entered my house. They searched it from top to bottom, but found no sign of an intruder. After securing the scene, they began questioning me and that's when everything started to go wrong. I tried to explain what had happened, but I was so distraught that all that came out was gibberish. They took me to the hospital and put me under armed guard. When I